This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on 9 years of ease of doing business. The participants are Sushma Ramachandran, business journalist, and S. Rangabasham, anchor.
India has made significant strides in improving the ease of doing business, creating a favorable environment for both domestic as well as international corporates to thrive. Through a series of regulatory reforms and policy initiatives, the Indian government has aimed to simplify bureaucratic processes, enhance transparency, and foster a conducive ecosystem for corporate growth. Ease of doing business has positively been impacted, and the Indian corporates are really encouraged, and it's really encouraging that innovation, investment and economic development has seen a big jump. To discuss the entire gamut of issues related to ease of doing business in India, we have with us Sushma Ramachandran. Sushma ji, a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Ranga.
Let's start off with the single window system for setting up an industry or a factory. So that is a big change with the advent of, the single window system. It's become much more easier to start a business in India, isn't it, ma'am?
I think that this has been a big demand, a long-standing demand, I should say, of both domestic and foreign investors, that you should be able to resolve all your issues in setting up an industry at one place. Because we have to accept that India has always had a very complex regulatory system with a whole lot of rules, regulations, laws, approvals. And even though we have cut them down a great deal, it will make life so much easier if this can all be approvals or can all be accessed at one single window. And this has now been achieved. It's a big step forward. It has made life so much easier for whether it is domestic industry or foreign investors coming into the country. And of course, the only problem I would say is that what has been done at the central level is not necessarily been done at the state level. Some states have done it, some states have not. So this is, of course, a process that is improving, day by day. It has been a huge step forward as far as ease of doing business is concerned.
Yeah. And Sushma ji, I'm sure you will agree that, the goods and services tax, which came into effect from the 1st of July 2017, was probably one of the biggest changes since independence, they say, and especially in the last 9 years. If we were to talk of big ticket reforms, GST would figure out to be one, isn't it?
Yes, it is one of the, we might call it one of the big bang economic reforms. And we must remember that it was talked about for, virtually 2 decades before it was finally implemented. And even when it was implemented, at the time, there was a lot of economists said, we're doing it in a hurry, we should not do it. But the fact is that whatever teething troubles took place, they would have happened at any time. And I think it's a marvelous performance if you see that the fact that the revenues, which everybody was worried at that time, that will we have sufficient revenue coming in, because all the states were getting taxes, were getting revenue from all the other many multiplicity of taxes, and were worried that whether they will get the same from this tax. But what has happened from getting, less than 1 lakh crore per month in, 2018-19, we are now up to, I think, 1.75 lakh crores a month in just 2 months last month. So this is a huge development. It has brought benefit in terms of revenue to the country. It has brought so much of ease in terms of doing business, whether it is small industry, whether it is medium industry or big industry, because you don't have to pay all those taxes. Secondly, everything is online. It is all transparent, and as a result of which, very well, again, the data shows that the number of taxpayers, people paying these indirect taxes, has gone up from 66 lakhs at that point of time in 2017 to 1.4 crores in 2022. So people are prepared to pay the tax if it's much easier to pay, which it now is.
Yeah. And Sushma ji, the very motto of the goods and services tax, one nation, one tax, one market. So that has been achieved.
Correct. Yes. Absolutely. It has certainly been achieved, and of course we are aware there was a time when trucks would be stopping at state borders. There are octroi payments to be made. There are many other state payments to be made, so there would be hold up. So this has improved the flow of the commodities throughout the country, improved the efficiency and productivity of the economy as a whole. So it is, everybody says that when you implement GST in a country, your GDP growth should go up by at least 1 to 2%. And of course, did not happen in the case of this country immediately because of the pandemic, and now we've had the Ukraine conflict. But, you can see the positive and beneficial impact it has had in terms of revenue inflows.
All these years, analysts and experts have always been saying that, the business of government is not to be in business. Means the government should actually not be into, hardcore commercial business. Do you think now the government is, seriously looking at it? I'm talking with reference to, say, for example, one sector of aviation.
Yes.
With the disinvestment of Air India, the government has come out from the aviation sector, and simultaneously it's also looking at other sectors, and it wants private investment to come in and thrive.
Yes. So if you see, they are looking for buyers also even in the oil sector, I think for BPCL, as well as for a host of, there are small companies, Container Corporation of India and many others, which need to be divested. And I think this motto, certainly, that government should not be in the business of business. This business needs to be given to the private sector, which does it far better than the government. And the government has many other things to do. It has to provide food to the people, provide education, healthcare, housing, many other huge tasks are before the government. And I think this divestment of Air India has been a great achievement. Again, it is something like GST, which was talked about for many years, but could not be implemented. And I think it was a great thing that this company, which was running huge, enormous losses, and it would have created further loss for the exchequer, and that is for the taxpayer. The taxpayer is losing every time a public sector undertaking goes into losses. I think this augurs well for the future.
Yeah. And analysts and critics have always been saying that, doing business in India full of, red tape, bureaucracy. But from red tape to red carpet, now it's actually welcoming, isn't it?
Yes. And I think one factor is, of course, the digitization of the economy. You are no longer having to go and meet people face to face. I mean, to some extent, of course, it is always there. But this, as we talked about earlier, the single window system, as far as taxation is concerned, also, everything is now online, and you can do most of your dealings with the tax departments online. That makes for greater transparency. All the export-import transactions also, most of them are now going online. So the digitization of the economy, which in where India has become a world leader, as you are well aware, is what has improved the ease of doing business in a tremendous way. I think the number of, for instance, UPI, of course, where India is a leader, I think the transactions there are 1.39 lakh crores in 22-23. If you take the US, the UK, France and Germany together, then only they would be able to match this level of digital transactions. The amount that are being done in India. This digitization of the economy has certainly contributed to the ease of doing business, because businessmen coming here, whether they're domestic businessmen, our own people within the country or people coming from out of the country, they are finding it easier to deal with government, to deal with clearances and approvals, because everything is now online.
And Sushma ji, you spoke about the impact of, Digital India on doing business. In the last 2 years, Faceless Assessment has been started in Income Tax Department, wherein you need not, and the bias has been removed. It's a faceless assessment, and who is the assessing officer, and the assessing officer is not bothered that whose details are these. So that in itself gives a lot of confidence to the businessman.
This has been really key, this faceless assessment. And if you have any grievances also, those are also online. Those are also sent to, it's a faceless kind of negotiation or discussion, I would say. And everything is transparent. So whatever your query is, it is answered online. It's all very public. And of course now, for the last few years, the ordinary citizen, the ordinary taxpayer has become so used to online filing of return. Just at the press of a button, you file your return, and as you say, it has become faceless. You don't have to worry about that. It was always the tax department in this country has always been something of a bugbear. Somebody will come and they will do what you call a random scrutiny of your accounts. And these quite intimidating for ordinary taxpayers, salaried taxpayers who really had nothing much to hide. So this is a great development, I would say.
Sushma ji, in the last 9 years, some 2,000 outdated legislations and acts, laws have been repealed, which were basically of the British era. So that would give a lot of comfort, not only to the business community, but to the entire general public.
In fact, I think this is one of the biggest reforms of this government. This scrapping of these outdated colonial laws, I think, is something that should have been undertaken many, many years ago, and it's a pity that it has taken so long for the authorities in this country to actually do this, because even though you might want to, the government of the day might want to provide ease of doing business, they were always constrained by these multiplicity of these laws. Because they are in existence, you have to follow them. And the other thing that this government has done, which is also very significant, Ranga, is they have withdrawn the aspect of criminality in offences under the Companies Act and made those into civil liabilities. You know, this aspect of looking at businessmen as criminals has been a very retrograde and very outdated concept.
Exactly. Actually, a businessman, not a criminal. You know, there could have been a default in filing a return or maybe, you know, in paying a tax, but he's not a criminal.
And actually, we should look at them as wealth creators, because they create wealth, they provide jobs, they provide tax revenues. So we should welcome them, as long as, of course, they function within the law. But certainly, as you say, they are not criminals. They may make mistakes, and of course, they need to be hauled up.
Let's also discuss the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act, the code. And it's been discussed for such a long time, but finally we have it, and that would give a big sigh of relief to corporate India.
Yes. First of all, for the first time, we have an infrastructure under which companies which have failed can be dealt with. In whatever way, you can liquidate the company, you can sell the company, you can break up the company and sell the assets. But there is a system. There was never any system in place to deal with a company which has failed. So this was, again, another very major reform. I would call it, in fact, a big bang economic reform. And after it has been put in place, you have had several large entities which have failed, and they have now been sold off. Either buyers have taken them, or their assets are being broken up and given to other people. So at least those assets are being utilized. Really, once again, the productivity and efficiency of the economy has improved.
Sushmaji, let's also focus on the small and medium enterprises, also, you know, micro enterprises, which were mostly, you know, in the last many decades, were actually in the unorganized sector. With the advent of this entire concept of micro, small and medium enterprises, they have actually come into the formal economy, and one of the major problems was financing, as we know. The advent of mudra loans, even that has been taken care of.
Yes, I think one of the big issues for small and medium enterprises, tiny, small and medium enterprises, was the issue of credit availability and how to get that from banks. And banks honestly have never been very keen to give to these smaller companies, smaller entities without collateral. So under this scheme, they are finally able to get collateral-free loans. They are able to get subsidized loans. And if you recall, at the time of the pandemic, there were special relief packages for the MSME sector, which again enabled them to get relief on the interest on their payments and allowed them to delay their payments. So there were several facilities available for the MSME sector. So this has given a lot of relief, and also, as you say, it has brought them into the formal economy. And the other factor that has brought them into the formal economy is the GST, because a lot of these very tiny companies were not paying tax, and one of the reasons they were not paying tax was simply the difficulty, the complexity of paying so many myriad taxes that we had. Under GST, because it is online, it's so much simpler. Also because there's the linkages of your inputs and output and products. So they were keen to become part of it, and they have been drawn into the formal economy.
Sushma Ramachandran, it's been a pleasure discussing the entire gamut of issues related to ease of doing business. Thank you so much for joining us in the program.
Thank you, Ranga.
You were listening to a discussion on 9 years of ease of doing business. The participants were Sushma Ramachandran, business journalist, and S. Rangabasham, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.